Imagine packing up your life, selling everything you own, and moving to a picture-perfect Australian town you saw on Instagram. The beaches look pristine. The weatherboard cottage has character. The real estate agent promised you the lifestyle of your dreams. They showed you sunset photos over the ocean and talked about community spirit. 6 months later, you're staring at a flooded living room watching your furniture float away. Your car is rusting from relentless salt air. The nearest hospital with an emergency department is 3 hours away on a single-lane highway. Your insurance company just sent a letter saying they won't renew your policy. The property value has dropped 30% since you bought it. This isn't a horror story. This is happening right now to thousands of people who moved to the wrong Australian towns in 2025. Australia is a continent of extremes. For every coastal paradise, there's a town where summer temperatures hit 50 degrees Celsius and the town infrastructure is collapsing. For every thriving regional city, there's a mining town where property values have crashed 70% since the boom ended. The real estate industry won't tell you this. Migration consultants glossing over the risks won't mention it. Local councils desperate for new residents certainly won't advertise it. Today, we're exposing the 20 places in Australia you should never move to in 2026. Not because we want to shame these communities, but because you deserve to know the truth before you make the biggest financial mistake of your life. Some of these towns are tourist destinations that look amazing for a weekend, but become nightmares when you actually live there. Others are landlocked suburbs where climate change is already making daily life unbearable. Others are mining towns facing terminal economic decline. Welcome to the unfiltered reality of Australian relocation in 2026. Number 20. Coober Pedy, South Australia. This town sits 900 kilometres north of Adelaide in the middle of the Australian outback. The entire population lives underground in dugout homes because surface temperatures regularly exceed 50 degrees Celsius in summer. What real estate agents don't tell you is that living in a cave sounds romantic until you realise there's no natural light streaming through windows. Ventilation systems constantly break down, and the isolation is psychologically crushing. The nearest major hospital is in Adelaide, a 10-hour drive away. The opal mining industry that built this town is dying. International competition and synthetic opals have destroyed the market. Young people are leaving in droves. The town's population has dropped from 3,500 in 1980 to less than 1,700 today. If you move here expecting frontier adventure, you'll find economic stagnation and summer heat that makes going outside genuinely dangerous for months at a time. Number 19. Broken Hill, New South Wales. This remote mining city in far western New South Wales markets itself as an outback cultural hub with historic architecture and art galleries. The reality is harsher. Broken Hill sits on the edge of Australia's most extreme climate zone. Summer days above 45 degrees Celsius are common. The town's water supply comes from the Menindee Lakes, which dried up completely during the 2018 to 2020 drought. Residents faced severe water restrictions while watching their town's main water source turn into cracked mud flats where fish carcasses rotted in the sun. The mining industry that sustained Broken Hill for over a century is contracting. Major employers have cut jobs. Property values have stagnated for over a decade. Young professionals are leaving for coastal opportunities. The nearest coastal city is Adelaide, which is 500 kilometres away across some of the hottest and driest land in Australia. Number 18. Port Pirie, South Australia. This industrial port city, 160 kilometres north of Adelaide, has a dark secret that real estate listings never mention. Port Pirie hosts one of the world's largest lead smelters. For decades, lead contamination has poisoned the town's children. Government health monitoring shows elevated blood lead levels in children living near the smelter zone. The company has implemented remediation programs, but the stigma remains. Property values in Port Pirie are among the lowest in South Australia because informed buyers know the contamination history. Beyond the environmental issues, Port Pirie offers limited employment outside the smelter. The summer heat is oppressive, with temperatures regularly exceeding 42 degrees Celsius. The town lacks the amenities and lifestyle options available in larger regional centres. Number 17. Karratha, Western Australia. This Pilbara mining town boomed during the resources boom of the 2000s. Property prices skyrocketed as mining companies competed for workers. Developers built thousands of homes. Shopping centres opened. The town's population swelled past 16,000. Then the boom ended. The construction phase of major LNG projects finished. Automation reduced mining employment. Karratha now has one of Australia's highest vacancy rates. Houses that sold for over $1 million in 2012 now struggle to fetch $300,000. Entire streets sit empty with for sale signs fading in the sun. The town sits in the cyclone belt. Severe tropical cyclones regularly threaten the region. Cyclone Ilsa in 2023 brought wind gusts over 200 kilometers per hour. Summer temperatures routinely exceed 45 degrees Celsius. Walking outside in January feels like opening an oven door. The cost of living remains inflated despite the population decline because everything must be transported over 1,500 kilometers from Perth. A carton of milk costs twice what it does in the city. Fresh vegetables arrive wilted after days on the roads. Karratha exists to service mining projects. When those projects wind down or automate, the town has no economic backup plan. There's no university, no diversified industry, no reasons to be there except the mines. Number 16. Mildura, Victoria. This Murray River city markets itself as a fruit-growing paradise with affordable housing and sunshine. What they don't advertise is the water crisis. The Murray-Darling Basin is Australia's most over-allocated river system. Climate change is reducing river flows. Irrigation allocations are being cut year after year. Mildura's horticulture industry faces an existential threat as water becomes scarcer. The town is also experiencing extreme temperature increases. Mildura now regularly records summer days above 47 degrees Celsius. Heat waves last for weeks. The town's infrastructure was never designed for this sustained extreme heat. Air conditioning bills become unaffordable for pensioners and low-income families. Gardens die without constant irrigation that's increasingly restricted. The economic model that sustained Mildura for a century is breaking down. Number 15. Whyalla, South Australia. This steel town on the Spencer Gulf has been in managed decline for years. The steelworks that employed thousands have been sold, restructured, and downsized repeatedly. The population has shrunk from 33,000 in the 1970s to around 21,000 today. Whyalla's housing market reflects this decline. Properties sell for a fraction of what similar homes cost in Adelaide. The problem is there's no economic diversification. When the steelworks inevitably close or further automate, Whyalla has no plan B. The town sits in a rain shadow. Annual rainfall is minimal. Summer heat is intense. The nearest major city is Adelaide, which is 4 hours away by car. Number 14. Ceduna, South Australia. This remote coastal town on the edge of the Nullarbor Plain markets itself to sea changers looking for a quiet coastal lifestyle. The reality is isolation. Ceduna sits 780 kilometres west of Adelaide. The nearest regional centre is Port Lincoln, 300 kilometres southeast. Medical services are limited. Serious medical issues require evacuation to Adelaide. The local economy depends on fishing and grain farming, both industries facing climate pressures. Youth unemployment is high. Ceduna's main street has more vacant shop fronts than thriving businesses. Number 13. Mount Isa, Queensland. This northwest Queensland mining city sits in one of the hottest and most isolated regions of Australia. Mount Isa is nearly 900 kilometres from the coast. Summer temperatures regularly exceed 45 degrees Celsius. The town exists entirely to service the Mount Isa mines' copper, silver, lead, and zinc operations. When commodity prices drop, the entire town's economy shudders. The mine has been operating since 1923 and faces eventual depletion. Like Port Pirie, Mount Isa has environmental contamination from decades of mining and smelting operations. Air quality concerns persist. The town's isolation means limited employment diversity, expensive groceries, and a transient population. Number 12. Katherine, Northern Territory. This tropical town, 320 kilometres south of Darwin, sits on the Katherine River in Crocodile Country. The wet season brings monsoonal flooding that regularly inundates parts of the town. The 1998 flood devastated Katherine. More recent floods in 2006, 2011, and 2023 have caused millions in damage. Climate models predict more intense wet seasons. Katherine is becoming increasingly uninsurable. Major insurance companies are withdrawing coverage or charging premiums that make home ownership economically unviable. The town's economy relies on defence facilities and tourism. Neither sector offers enough stable employment to support population growth. Katherine's summers are oppressively hot and humid. The dry season brings dangerous bushfire conditions in surrounding areas. Number 11. Gladstone, Queensland. This industrial port city, 450 kilometres north of Brisbane, is dominated by heavy industry. Aluminium refineries, coal-fired power plants, and liquefied natural gas facilities define Gladstone's economy. The port handles massive coal exports. As the world transitions away from coal, Gladstone faces an uncertain future. The town's air quality has been a persistent concern. Residents have reported health issues they attribute to industrial emissions. Gladstone Harbour has been dredged repeatedly for port expansion, causing environmental damage. The town sits in the cyclone belt. Gladstone's industrial infrastructure makes it vulnerable to storm surge and flooding. Number 10. Longreach, Queensland. This outback Queensland town sits 700 kilometres inland from Rockhampton. Longreach markets itself on its pioneering heritage and its role in Australian aviation history. The problem is there's almost nothing else. The town's economy depends entirely on tourism visits to the Qantas Founders Museum and heritage attractions. Agriculture in the surrounding region is marginal at best. Severe droughts regularly devastate the pastoral industry. Longreach summers are brutal. Temperatures above 45 degrees Celsius are routine. Winter nights can drop below freezing. The temperature swing can exceed 30 degrees in a single day. The town's isolation is profound. Brisbane is over 1,000 kilometres to the east. Medical specialists are non-existent. Serious health issues require evacuation by flying doctor service. Young people leave for education and employment opportunities elsewhere. Number 9. Moranbah, Queensland. This Bowen Basin coal mining town boomed during the mining boom. Property prices soared to absurd levels. A basic 3-bedroom house was selling for over $800,000 in 2012. Then the boom crashed. Moranbah's population peaked at nearly 12,000 and has since dropped below 9,000. The town has massive housing oversupply. Properties that sold for $750,000 now sell for $250,000 if they sell at all. Moranbah exists solely for coal mining. As Australia and the world transition away from coal, Moranbah's long-term viability is in serious question. The town sits in extreme heat territory. Summer temperatures regularly exceed 42 degrees Celsius. There's no coastal amenity, no cultural scene, just mines and the infrastructure that supports them. Number 8. Tennant Creek, Northern Territory. This small town sits 500 kilometres north of Alice Springs on the Stuart Highway. Tennant Creek was built on gold mining and pastoral industries. Both have declined dramatically. The town's population has shrunk to just over 3,000 people. Unemployment is high. Social problems are visible and persistent. Tennant Creek sits in the middle of nowhere. Darwin is over 1,000 kilometres to the north. Alice Springs is 500 kilometres south. The town experiences extreme temperatures. Summer days above 45 degrees Celsius are common. Essential services are limited. The town struggles to attract and retain doctors, teachers, and other professionals who could stabilise the community. Real estate is cheap because almost nobody wants to move there. Those who do often leave within a year. Number 7. Cloncurry, Queensland. This northwest Queensland town in the state's mineral heartland has recorded some of Australia's highest temperatures. In January 1889, Cloncurry reached 53.1 degrees Celsius, still Australia's official heat record. Modern summers aren't much cooler. The town sits in extreme heat territory where 45-degree days are routine from November through March. Cloncurry's economy depends entirely on mining. When copper prices drop, the town suffers. The population is declining. Young people leave for opportunities in coastal cities. The nearest regional centre is Mount Isa, which is 120 kilometres west and itself problematic. Townsville on the coast is nearly 900 kilometres to the east. Number 6. Roxby Downs, South Australia. This planned mining town in the South Australian Outback exists solely to service the Olympic Dam mine, one of the world's largest uranium, copper, and gold deposits. The town was purpose-built in the 1980s. Everything about Roxby Downs is artificial and controlled. The mining company owns most of the land. Housing is limited. The town is over 500 kilometres from Adelaide, across some of Australia's most barren desert. Summer temperatures regularly exceed 45 degrees Celsius. Water comes from the Great Artesian Basin and is treated to remove naturally occurring contaminants. The town has no independent economy. When Olympic Dam eventually winds down or automates further, Roxby Downs will face the same fate as other single industry mining towns. It will become a modern ghost town in the desert. Number 5. Newman, Western Australia. This Pilbara iron ore mining town is one of the most isolated communities in Australia. Newman sits 1,200 kilometres north of Perth in the heart of Western Australia's iron ore country. The town exists because of massive iron ore deposits. When ore prices boom, Newman thrives. When prices crash, unemployment spikes and families leave. The town's population has fluctuated wildly over the decades. Newman experiences extreme heat. Summer temperatures above 47 degrees Celsius are recorded multiple times each year. The town sits in cyclone territory. Infrastructure is expensive to maintain because everything must be trucked in from the coast. Real estate prices remain inflated despite the boom-bust cycles because mining companies subsidise housing costs. Number 4. Bourke, New South Wales. This far western New South Wales town on the Darling River is synonymous with remoteness. The phrase back of Bourke means the middle of nowhere in Australian slang. Bourke's population peaked at over 3,000 in the late 1800s. Today, it struggles to maintain around 2,000 residents. The town sits in one of Australia's hottest and driest regions. The Darling River, Bourke's lifeblood, has dried up completely during recent droughts. In 2019, mass fish kills in the Darling River shocked the nation. Millions of fish died as river pools became oxygen-depleted cesspools of agricultural runoff. The images of dead fish carpeting the riverbed went global. Climate change is making droughts longer and more severe. Bourke's agricultural economy is collapsing. Young people are leaving. Essential services are being cut back. Number 3. Lightning Ridge, New South Wales. This remote opal mining town sits 770 kilometres northwest of Sydney near the Queensland border. Lightning Ridge attracts dreamers and prospectors hoping to strike it rich finding black opals. The reality is harsh. Most opal miners barely scrape by. The town has minimal infrastructure. Many residents live in converted shipping containers or rough bush camps. Summer temperatures exceed 45 degrees Celsius regularly. Water is scarce and expensive. The town has limited medical facilities. Mental health and substance abuse issues are prevalent. Lightning Ridge's economy depends entirely on opal mining. The town offers no employment diversity. Property is cheap because living conditions are brutal. Number 2. Coober Pedy alternatives across the South Australian outback. We need to talk about the entire network of tiny settlements scattered across South Australia's desert interior. Towns like Andamuka, William Creek, Udnadara, and Mari. These places have populations measured in dozens, not thousands. They exist as historical remnants or service tiny pastoral operations. Summer heat is life-threatening. Temperatures above 50 degrees Celsius occur. Water comes from bores or is trucked in. Medical facilities are non-existent. The nearest hospital can be 5 or 6 hours away by car. These settlements are experiencing managed abandonment. Services are being withdrawn. Schools close. Post offices shut down. The South Australian government is quietly accepting that these remote settlements have no viable future. Number 1. Any coastal town in far north Queensland that sits in the direct path of intensifying tropical cyclones and is experiencing uninsurable flood risk. We're talking about places like Tully, Cardwell, Ingham, and parts of Townsville's northern suburbs. These towns sit in Australia's wettest cyclone zone. Tully receives over 4,000 millimetres of annual rainfall. When tropical cyclones intensify, these towns flood catastrophically. Cyclone Yasi in 2011 devastated the region. Since then, insurance costs have skyrocketed. Major insurance companies are withdrawing coverage or charging premiums that exceed annual property values. Climate models predict cyclones will become more intense even if they become less frequent. Category 4 and 5 systems will become more common. For homeowners in these towns, the economic reality is brutal. You cannot get affordable insurance. You cannot sell your property because informed buyers won't touch uninsurable real estate. You are trapped in a home that could be destroyed in the next cyclone season with no financial protection. This is the climate change endgame already playing out in 2026. So what have we learned? Australia is a beautiful country with incredible opportunities, but not everywhere is suitable for permanent relocation. The 20 places we've examined share common problems. Extreme climate conditions that are worsening with climate change. Economic dependence on single industries with uncertain futures. Geographic isolation that makes accessing essential services difficult or impossible. Environmental contamination from historical industrial activities. And insurance markets that are retreating from high-risk areas, leaving homeowners financially exposed. Before you move anywhere in Australia, do the research that real estate agents won't tell you. Check climate projections for the region. The Bureau of Meteorology publishes detailed climate data showing temperature trends and rainfall patterns. Understand the local economy and whether it's growing or contracting. Look at census data showing population trends over the past 20 years. If a town's population is shrinking, there's a reason. Investigate insurance availability and costs before you buy. Call insurance companies directly and get quotes before you commit to a property purchase. Some areas are already effectively uninsurable. Look at hospital and medical specialist access. Check how far you'd need to travel for cancer treatment, cardiac care, or complex surgery. In remote areas, that distance can be fatal. Talk to locals who've lived there for years, not just recent arrivals still in the honeymoon phase. Ask about the hidden costs nobody mentions in the glossy brochures. The infrastructure failures. The reality of summer heat or wet season flooding. Australia's future is not evenly distributed. Some regions will thrive as the climate changes and the economy evolves. Others will decline into abandonment. The government is quietly withdrawing services from towns that no longer make economic sense. Schools close. Post offices shut. Bus routes are cancelled. If you choose the wrong location, you won't just lose money on your property investment. You'll lose years of your life stuck in a place with no exit strategy. Choose wisely. Your financial future and your quality of life depend on it. Do you know someone who moved to a regional Australian town and regretted it? What warning signs did they miss? Share your experiences in the comments to help others avoid the same mistakes.